So you want to lose weight a lot faster. This is what you want to use. It's called Keto on Steroids Updated. And this is kind of like the 12-page cheat sheet, kind of summarized version of this video. All right, so let's first talk about carbohydrates, okay? What makes you go into ketosis is the reduction of carbohydrates, okay? That's the key factor you need to realize. The regular version of the ketogenic diet allows 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrate per day. We're going to bring the carbohydrate down to near zero. Okay, it's going to be hard to bring it down to zero because there's a little bit of carb in lemon and even like a half a carb in eggs. Okay, so it's going to be close enough. So we want to bring it near zero. This will really make sure that we induce deep ketosis. Now, here's the thing. We want you to consume 7 to 10 cups of vegetable, but vegetables are carbohydrates. So we have a problem, but we actually don't have a problem because most of the carbohydrate in vegetable is actually fiber, okay? So there are certain vegetables that are higher on the glycemic index, so you would want to avoid those, like corn, which you should never even eat corn anyway, peas, squash, beets, tomato, and carrot. Now, these things may slow you down, so we just want to avoid them. We want to focus on leafy greens, okay? Now, fiber is a carbohydrate, but it has a different effect on insulin than other carbohydrates. It does not spike insulin, but what happens is your microbes eat this fiber and they turn it into butyric acid, which then has the ability to improve insulin resistance and lower your insulin indirectly. Now, here's the thing. There are certain individuals that get a lot of bloating with vegetables, okay? So if that's you, you need to avoid vegetables for a while, maybe up to a month, because you may have a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, in which the bacteria, even the friendly bacteria, is growing in the small intestine when it should be growing in the large intestine. So what happens, you dump all this fiber down into the small intestine, and those microbes go to town and produce a lot of excess gas, like methane gas and hydrogen gas, and you just feel very uncomfortable and you retain fluid from that. So you may want to try instead a green product or a green powder or even a wheatgrass juice powder to get the nutrients. All right, so one little point, when we talk about zero carbs, we're talking about near zero, but we're not including the vegetable carbohydrates into this mix, but we are excluding these vegetables, corn, peas, squash, beets. It's right in this document right here. And carrot, okay? I recommend salads, so that would be very important. All right, so now let's go to the next section. Let's talk about protein. So you'd want to consume a moderate amount of protein, not a high protein diet, but a moderate amount, okay? 3 to 6 ounces. Now, that could vary because you might be a very big person, or you might be younger where your metabolism is pretty good, in which case, I don't know why you're doing this, but the point is that you could potentially need a little more protein, okay? Now, so it could go up to like 8 ounces, something like that. We want to consume our protein and fat in one food, okay? And so these foods that I'm going to list right here actually come with fat and protein at the same time. So we don't want to necessarily add more fat to this program. You can add some, but I'll explain this when we get to that point. Because those are lower on the insulin index. Okay, now what is the insulin index? Well, it's different than the glycemic index. There are non-carbohydrate foods that also influence insulin. And the leaner the proteins are, the more they influence insulin. Now, realize that the more insulin you have, the less weight you're going to lose. So we don't want to trigger it with certain things like carbohydrates or lean proteins. The fattier the protein, the less effect on insulin you're going to have, okay? And the reason we want to keep this in a moderate amount is because large amount of protein can also trigger insulin. So these are the proteins I would recommend. Salmon, make sure you get wild caught, or fatty fish. Sardines, in olive oil, not water, wild caught. Hamburger, 80% or fattier. You don't want to get lean hamburger. And of course, grass-fed. Eggs, duck eggs would be a little bit better, but make sure you get pasture-raised eggs because we want to go quality. Seafood and pork. Now, if you go to the farmer's market, you can get some higher quality pork, or you can get organic bacon. Personally, I consume this. Pork has a lot of vitamin B1, but again, you don't have to do pork, but it is fattier. Okay, what to avoid? The whey protein. There is a little carb in whey protein, by the way, but whey protein, because it's so lean, is one of the highest proteins on the insulin index. We want it low. We don't want to stimulate insulin. So by consuming whey, you're going to increase insulin. Chicken is too lean, okay, especially if you're consuming without the skin. Turkey, also too lean, so we don't want to do that. Protein powders are concentrated, so you don't want to do that as well. Lean fish, you want to avoid that. And lean meats, you want to do more of the fattier proteins, okay? Now, you do want to avoid nuts because they do have carbohydrates and they do irritate the digestion many times and will create bloating. And you want to avoid dairy. Number one, because a lot of people are sensitive to dairy. It can increase inflammation. There are some carbs in dairy. The only exception is to consume whole cream, grass-fed if you can find it. Definitely, at the very minimum, organic in your coffee. If you need to add some whole cream in your coffee, don't use half and half. Use whole cream, and that way you'll keep your carbs even lower. Okay, just a little bit. And this leads us to the next topic, and that is fats. What happens when you do ketosis is you're consuming more fats. And in the beginning, it's really important so you can make this transition easily because the more fat you consume, you can go longer without eating. So it really helps when you do intermittent fasting. But when you get into ketosis and you're fully adapted, what you're going to run into is that your body is going to use the dietary fat as your ketones, and less of your own body fat as ketones, preventing weight loss, especially if you're doing the bulletproof coffee, which you're adding MCT oil and you're adding butter, which you want to avoid on this. The only fat I'm going to recommend is just a little bit of whole cream in that coffee, but not anything else. We don't want to do MCT oil on this program. So here's what I'm going to recommend to bring your fats down to at least 75 grams per day or less. Now, if you look on this chart right here, when you first look at the notes, you'll see that the fat is 55%, okay? The total calories is 55%. In the regular pie chart with the ketogenic diet, it's like 70%. So we're actually going lower, which automatically brings up the percentage of protein. So, but you realize you're looking at the percent, it's still going to be 3 to 6 ounces. So you don't have to worry about that. You're not actually increasing more and more protein. It just comes out to 39% because you're eating less fat. Okay. So if you keep your fat below 75 grams, you will be able to burn your own fat a lot more than the dietary fat. Now, the next thing you're going to probably want to know is, what does that look like? Okay. Well, I have pictures. So we have a picture right here. I have some more pictures of 75 grams or around that. More pictures and even more pictures. So you'll have the visual and even more of what type of fats equal 75 grams. Okay? So that will help you greatly. All right, the next part we're going to talk about intermittent fasting. All right, let's talk about intermittent fasting. Hopefully you've already transitioned into 2 meals per day, but I always recommend starting with 3 meals, no snacks, and then graduating into 2 meals a day, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to slowly start pushing your breakfast forward and to the point where you're only at 2 meals a day. So you do it gradually. Let your body tell you when it's okay to not eat. You don't want to do this while you're just starving all the time, okay? So there's going to be a point where you're not going to even crave anything or be hungry. So just don't eat if you're not hungry. That is the most important thing. So many people eat when they're not even hungry, especially at night. They're just bored or they're stressed. So I understand there might be a little hunger. Don't worry about that. Like if you have a strong hunger or you feel weak, then it's time to eat. But because you are reducing your carbs so low, you're going to get into ketosis so much faster. A lot of times people make this huge mistake of keeping their carbs too high and then also trying to do intermittent fasting. And the carbs are too high. And because there's too much insulin from the higher carbs, they don't transition fast. So the transition period is longer and they suffer a lot longer. But this is like ripping the Band-Aid off. Drop the carb, get into ketosis, boom, within 2 days, like maybe even 2 to 3 days, you're in some serious deep ketosis. Now, the intermittent fasting is just the icing on the cake. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about cake. It allows you to add another dynamic that speeds it up even more and drops insulin even more because of the fact that every time you eat, you trigger insulin, okay? So we want the least amount of meals. So we want to gradually go into no snacks and then 2 meals a day. Then what we want to do is start pushing the eating window closer and closer and closer. And the eating window is actually the time period between eating, okay? And then the other period is the fasting period. So we want to gradually push the meals to the point where it's like 4 hours. That would give you a 20-hour fast, okay? But you can turn up the dial and actually go even deeper into ketosis by going to 1 meal a day. And a lot of people need this. Our bodies were not designed to consume so many meals. A lot of people, especially when they get into menopause, they feel the best when they're doing 1 meal a day, okay? So that would give you 23 hours of fasting. So a lot of benefits from that. If you combine what I said to eat with this, you're going to lose some weight. Okay. All right. So that's how you would do intermittent fasting. And again, it's all right in this document right here. You can read it. I try to keep it really simple, like on 1 page. Hope you appreciate that. It takes a while to make things simple. So now let's talk about prolonged fasting. Okay. And so there's different versions of prolonged fasting, but this just adds more benefit, more health benefits, more, it's called autophagy, which your body is recycling old damaged proteins. So it can really help you. So you would basically gradually go into this first one here, which is 48 to 72 hours of fasting. Maybe you do it once a month. Very, very therapeutic. Okay. Maybe the first time you do it, you go 30 hours. And then next time you do it, you go a little bit more, a little bit more. So I'd like you to do it gradually. Why? Because when you do fasting this long, you're tapping into your reserve, your nutrient reserves. And if you don't have enough nutrition in your body, if you're deficient, those will be magnified. Here's another option. You can do 24-hour fast every other day. So basically you're eating once every other day. Some people that are carrying a lot of extra weight really would benefit from this right here. And the way that you know you really need this is that your hunger just completely goes away. You're just not hungry anymore. And this happens with a lot of people. Well, just ride the wave. Get the weight off. I mean, your body is not starving. It's living off your own fat. So that's the meal. It's eating all day long. This is 5 pounds of fat right here. Okay? This is what your body is living off of. It's your stored fuel. That's what it's designed to do, is to help you between meals. Okay? Here's another option. 48-hour fast on the weekends. Just fast on the weekends. Okay? Probably be actually better to fast on the weekends because this is where people are tempted to eat the wrong foods, Friday night, Saturday night. Okay, so that's prolonged fasting. That'll give you a lot of benefit. All right? So, and you'll read this, some tips. Do it gradually. Add sea salt. I would highly recommend getting my electrolyte powder because that's going to give you the potassium you need to give you energy. Most people are deficient in potassium, magnesium, so this will supply it and you'll feel really good. And it also includes citrates. So when you consume potassium citrate or magnesium citrate, you lower the risk of kidney stones. When you do fasting, especially prolonged fasting, you do get a spike in uric acid, okay? Because uric acid, believe it or not, one function is an antioxidant. So you have this spike of uric acid, but at the same time, if you're predisposed to gout or a kidney stone, you could have a flare-up with that, okay? But if you're taking potassium citrate or magnesium citrate, you can counter that. One way to counter gout symptoms would be to alkalize the body. So this powder is really good to do that. Lemon juice is good. I also recommend B vitamins from nutritional yeast. I created something called nutritional yeast tablets to make it easier to consume because sometimes the powder kind of gets stuck in your teeth. So you can try that if you want. It's unfortified, so it doesn't have synthetics. Okay, so the next strategy is rotating the times you eat. Now, this principle follows like muscle confusion, which is basically based on this. When you work out and you train for a period of time, if you do the same workout, your body gets used to it and you lose the improvements, the gains. So the whole objective of exercise is to stress the body to the point where it has to adapt and improve in strength and fitness. If you're doing the same workout over and over, your body gets used to it and then you don't adapt anymore because it got used to that. The same thing with eating. If you eat at the same time every single day, or you do the same pattern every single day, your body will adapt to that. So it's much better to rotate the times you eat. So don't always eat at the same time. Don't always do the same pattern of fasting. So you can vary it up to kind of keep the body in that adaptation mode. It's just another strategy that you can work on. So I mentioned here, like fast for 24 hours a few times a week, but not all on the same day, like rotate it each week. Or number 2, do a 48-hour fast 3 times a month, but not at the same pattern or time. Okay, or eat your one meal in the morning one day and the PM in the next day. All right, so give you even additional examples right there. I do recommend apple cider vinegar because apple cider vinegar actually will help you in speeding up the weight loss because it actually reduces insulin resistance. So it'll help reduce insulin and help your blood sugars, and that will help you. So take like a tablespoon or 2 in some water and drink it once or twice a day, or when you're eating, okay, in some water. Use a straw. Now let's talk about the B vitamins. You need these to make the transition, and especially if you want to maintain your energy. And the B vitamins are needed in the mitochondria to help you burn fat. Okay, you also need magnesium and things like that. Well, you're going to get that from the vegetables. Okay, another thing you want to do is keep your stress low as possible. I know that's easier said than done, but realize that there are hidden sources of stress like loneliness, losses, injuries, being in a situation where you are kind of like at work, for example, where you're constantly running into this maybe stressful person. So actively and aggressively do whatever you can to get out of that situation so your stress level goes down. And also try to get an extra hour of sleep. That would give you tremendous help. Go for long walks each day without your headphones, without anyone else, and just get more space. That will help you. There's a video that I have, you can look it up. It's called Stress Webinar. It actually walks you through how to do techniques to actually extract stress from your body. Very beneficial. The nutritional yeast gives you B vitamins, specifically B1, to help reduce that nervous tension, stress, and turn inside the body as well. Very important. Okay, then we get into potassium. Okay, it's not vitamin K, it's potassium. It's the symbol for it. You're going to get most of the potassium from the vegetables. My electrolyte powder has 1,000 milligrams of potassium per serving, so it's quite a bit. That will speed things up as well, because it actually helps decrease the insulin resistance, so thereby it decreases insulin. When you have insulin resistance, you can't really absorb potassium. So the need for potassium goes up. By taking more potassium, you can improve that situation. Now, one more point about sleep. There's 2 things. One is I have a sleep aid that is not a sleeping pill. It doesn't have melatonin. It has certain nutrients that help support the adrenal. I take it before I go to bed. It really helps. You may need some of that. Also, I have a massage tool. It's an acupressure tool that you can use to extract stress 7 different places in your body. I also use that before I go to bed. It's just additional help if you need it. The other point I want to bring up is if there's some other body problems that you have, those can slow you down. So you're going to have to address that, whether it's a thyroid or inflammatory conditions or whatever. You may not need to even worry about that, because if you get this basic eating plan in, a lot of your other problems will go away. But if you do have another body problem, that could be sort of like the open application on your desktop computer that stops you from losing weight, okay? So I just want to bring that up as kind of just looking at the weakest link in the body and then strengthening that. Okay, so then we get to exercise. There's a couple points about exercise. One is that the higher intensity interval training works the best. So if you do high bouts of short, intense exercise, working out between 20 to 40 minutes is like the sweet spot, like maybe twice a week, just to make sure you don't overtrain. That would be the ideal situation. If you can actually go into a class or get a personal trainer, that's even better, but you don't have to do that. But you just need to realize that you have to push yourself to do this because this is painful. But that high intensity interval training will greatly speed things up, especially if you're working out during the fasting period, not when you're eating, but during the fasting period. You can accelerate things greatly. The optimum best hardcore exercise would be sprinting, and then you have swimming versus a lower intensity. Okay, so the whole goal with exercise and fasting and lowering your carb is to spike growth hormone, which will not just help you lose weight, but it will enhance your ability to stay young because it is the anti-aging hormone. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Now your next step is to go ahead and apply it. So if you want more knowledge on how to create a healthy body, subscribe now and get daily notifications. Daily notifications, that sounds weird. Well, I'll just remind you on a daily basis. How about that?